Night was falling over Jerusalem. The air felt heavy, as if heaven itself was holding its breath. For years he had walked among the people, healing the sick, raising the dead, speaking words that pierced the hardest hearts. Many loved him, many feared him, and some wanted him silenced forever. What was about to unfold would shake the earth, darken the sky, and change the destiny of mankind. This is the passion of Jesus Christ. Our story begins far away in Jerusalem. Long ago, Jerusalem was restless. The holy city, ancient, weathered, and sacred, pulsed with unusual intensity. From the northern gates to the courts of the temple, the roads were crowded with pilgrims who had journeyed from distant lands. They came as their fathers had come, and as their fathers' fathers had come, for the season of Passover had arrived. Every year, according to the command given through Moses, the children of Israel returned in heart and memory to the night that had defined them forever, the night of deliverance from Egypt. It was not merely a festival. It was remembrance, written in ritual. It was theology told through a meal. It was history kept alive through sacred obedience. Nearly 15 centuries earlier in the land of Egypt, Israel had groaned under the iron weight of Pharaoh's bondage. Their backs had bent beneath forced labor. Their cries had risen toward heaven like smoke. And heaven had answered. On the final night of judgment, the Lord had given a command both strange and precise. Every household was to take a lamb, spotless, without blemish. The lamb was to be slain at twilight. Its blood was to be brushed upon the wooden doorposts of every faithful home. For that night, death would pass through the land. But wherever the blood was found, judgment would pass over. And so it was. The lamb died, so the firstborn might live. Bondage broke, chains fell, and Israel walked out of Egypt not as slaves, but as a people redeemed by blood. From that night forward, the Lord commanded that this deliverance must never be forgotten. Year after year, generation after generation, families gathered to eat the Passover meal, unleavened bread, to remember the haste of their escape, bitter herbs, to remember the bitterness of slavery, the cup of blessing, to remember the promise of redemption, and at the center of it all, the Passover lamb. But in Jerusalem, in this particular year, beneath the familiar rhythms of tradition, something deeper was unfolding. For 3 years, a teacher from Nazareth had walked the dusty roads of Judea and Galilee. He spoke not like the scribes. He healed with a word. He commanded storms. He opened blind eyes. And everywhere he went, the crowds followed. Some whispered with hope.
Could this be the Messiah?
Others watched with growing unease, because in ancient Israel, expectations of the Messiah burned hot in the hearts of the people. Many longed for a deliverer greater than Moses, one who would break not merely the chains of Egypt, but the iron grip of Rome. And Rome was always watching. The empire tolerated many gods. It permitted many customs, but it crushed anything that smelled of rebellion. Meanwhile, within the temple courts, the chief priests guarded more than doctrine. They guarded power, order, and fragile peace with Rome. And this man from Nazareth was disturbing all three, quietly at first, then unmistakably. So while pilgrims prepared their lambs, while families rehearsed the ancient story, while Jerusalem filled with the language of deliverance, the true Lamb of God was walking steadily toward his appointed hour. Most did not see it. Most did not understand it. But heaven was already moving. The shadow of the cross was beginning to stretch across the city of David. And the night of the final Passover was drawing near. On this night in Jerusalem, something far greater was unfolding. For seated at the head of the table was the one to whom every Passover had always pointed. As the meal was being prepared, an unexpected moment unfolded. In the customs of the ancient world, the washing of feet was the task of the lowest servant in the household. The roads of Judea were dusty. Sand clung to every sandal, and hospitality demanded that weary feet be washed upon entering a home. Yet in that upper room, no servant stepped forward. The disciples had taken their places. The water basin stood ready, but the task remained undone. Then, quietly, Jesus rose from the table. The room grew still. He laid aside his outer garment, took a towel, and girded himself. One by one he knelt before his own disciples, the Master bowing before the students. Water poured into the basin. Dust was gently washed away. Calloused feet, the feet of fishermen, tax collectors, and zealots, rested in the hands of the Son of God. When he came to Simon Peter, Peter recoiled in shock.
Lord, do you wash my feet?
What I do you do not know it now, but thou shalt know hereafter.
And in that quiet upper room, the King of Heaven revealed the true nature of his kingdom. Not power, not domination, but humble, sacrificial love. Jesus took the bread into his hands. According to the custom of Israel, the head of the meal would bless the bread, giving thanks to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The disciples watched quietly. They had seen him bless bread before. They had seen him multiply it in the wilderness. But tonight, there was a solemn weight in the air. He blessed the bread. Then slowly, deliberately, he broke it. The small sound of tearing bread seemed to echo in the stillness of the room. And then he spoke words that none of them expected.
This is my body, which is given for you.
A ripple of confusion passed across the table. Eyes met eyes, brows furrowed. They did not yet understand. How could they eat a human's body? For the mystery of the cross was still hidden in the shadows of the coming hours. Then Jesus reached for the cup. Not just any cup, but the cup taken after the meal, known among the Jews as the cup of redemption. For generations, it had been lifted in remembrance of the blood of the Lamb that spared Israel in Egypt. Now, in the quiet glow of the upper room, Jesus raised it slowly. The deep red wine caught the lamplight, and with solemn authority he said,
This is my blood of the New Testament, which shall be shed for many, unto the remission of sins.
The room fell utterly still. Is he asking us to drink his blood now? This was no longer only remembrance. This was revelation.
Huh?
I tell you that one of you will betray me, one of you who is eating with me now.
Surely you don't mean me, do you?
Certainly not me either.
It will be one of you 12, one who dips his bread in the dish with me. The Son of Man will die as the Scriptures say he will. But how terrible for that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would have been better for that man if he had never been born.
I will never leave you, even though all the rest do.
I tell you, Peter, that before the cock crows twice tonight, you will say 3 times that you do not know me.
I will never say that, even if I have to die with you.
The ancient symbols, kept faithfully for centuries, were being fulfilled before their very eyes. The true Lamb was sitting at the table. Yet even now, most of them did not fully grasp what lay ahead. Outside, Jerusalem continued its Passover preparations. Families selected their lambs. Priests prepared the temple courts. Pilgrims rehearsed the ancient story of deliverance. But heaven was moving toward a greater exodus, not from Egypt, but from sin and death itself. And in the quiet of that upper room, the shadow of the cross drew closer. The meal continued, but the hour of surrender was now at hand. Then they left after the meal. Down the slope they walked, across the darkened Kidron Valley, toward a familiar place on the Mount of Olives, a garden, Gethsemane. The name itself meant the oil press, and on this night, the Anointed One would be pressed beneath a weight no human heart had ever borne. They entered the grove of ancient olive trees. The moon cast pale silver light through twisted branches. The air was still, heavy. Jesus turned to his disciples and spoke with unusual gravity.
Sit still here, till I go yonder and pray.
Taking Peter, James, and John a little farther, he began to reveal a sorrow the disciples had never seen in him before. The one who had stood unshaken before storms, now trembled beneath an unseen burden. His voice, usually so steady, was heavy with anguish.
Father, if it be possible, let this chalice pass from me.
Taking Peter, James, and John a little farther, he began to reveal a sorrow the disciples had never seen in him before. The one who had stood unshaken before storms, now trembled beneath an unseen burden. His voice, usually so steady, was heavy with anguish.
Nevertheless, not as I will, but let thy will be done.
He returned to the disciples, but the hour was late, and they slept, not out of malice, not out of indifference, but from the heaviness of human weakness. Peter, so bold at the table, now struggled to keep his eyes open. Jesus spoke gently, yet with quiet sorrow.
Could you not watch 1 hour with me?
Then once more, he withdrew into the shadows. The night deepened, the struggle intensified. Again he prayed, again he surrendered. And the gospel tells us something mysterious and terrible. His sweat became as drops of blood falling down upon the ground. The pressure was beyond human telling. The hour was fixed, the path was chosen, and heaven itself bore witness as the Son of God yielded fully to the Father's will. At last, he rose from prayer. The stillness of the garden had changed. In the distance, faint movement, flickering light, the sound of many feet approaching through the olive grove. The betrayer was coming, and the passion was now in motion. Meanwhile, Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, went off to the chief priests in order to betray Jesus to them. They were pleased to hear what he had to say and promised to give him money, 30 pieces of silver in all. So Judas started looking for a good chance to hand Jesus over to them. Jesus was still speaking when Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs, and sent by the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. The traitor had given the crowd a signal.
The man I kiss is the one you want. Arrest him and take him away under guard.
In the ancient world, a kiss was a sign of loyalty, honor, and friendship. But on this night, the sacred sign would be twisted into betrayal. Judas stepped forward into the pale moonlight. For a brief moment, the garden seemed to hold its breath. He approached the Master,
Rabbi,
and he kissed him. Jesus did not pull away. He did not resist. Instead, with a voice both sorrowful and steady, he spoke.
Did you have to come with swords and clubs to capture me, as though I were an outlaw? Day after day I was with you teaching in the temple, and you did not arrest me. But the scriptures must come true.
Peter, always the quickest to act, drew his sword. In a sudden flash of steel, he struck at the servant of the high priest. The blade cut through the night, and the man cried out. His ear had been severed, but Jesus intervened at once. Even now, even in the moment of his arrest, his mercy moved first.
Put up thy sword into the scabbard.
Then, reaching out, he touched the wounded servant. And where violence had just been done, healing followed. The last miracle before the cross was an act of mercy toward one who had come to seize him. Then Jesus turned toward the armed crowd. Torches flickered across drawn faces. Temple guards stood ready. Roman authority loomed behind the scene. And with quiet authority, he asked,
Whom do you seek?
Jesus of Nazareth.
I am he.
At the sound of his voice, the gospel tells us something remarkable. They drew back and fell to the ground. Even now, his authority was unmistakable. Even now, he was not being overpowered. He was surrendering. Again, he asked them whom they sought. Again, they answered, and this time, he yielded himself fully. The ropes were fastened. The disciples, just as he had foretold, scattered into the darkness. Fear overcame their earlier boldness. The shepherd was struck, and the sheep fled. Under the cold light of the Passover moon, Jesus was led away from the garden, bound, but not defeated, surrounded, but fully in control of the hour. The long night of trial had begun. They brought him first to the house of Annas, the former high priest, a man whose influence still lingered heavily within the temple courts. Questions were asked, accusations were implied, but Jesus answered little. Not from weakness, but from quiet authority, for the outcome of this night had already been set in motion. From there he was taken to Caiaphas, the acting high priest, where members of the council were hastily assembled. According to the law of Moses, capital cases required careful testimony, 2 witnesses, agreement, daylight proceedings. But on this night, the forms of justice remained, while its spirit was quietly abandoned. False witnesses stepped forward. Stories were twisted. Words were taken out of their meaning, and still, the prisoner remained largely silent.
We heard him say, I will tear down this temple which men have made, and after 3 days I will build one that is not made by men.
The high priest leaned forward at last, his voice sharp with frustration.
Are you the Messiah, the Son of the blessed God?
I am. And you will all see the Son of Man seated on the right of the Almighty and coming with the clouds of heaven.
The words struck like thunder in the chamber. Caiaphas tore his garments in outrage.
We don't need any more witnesses. You heard his blasphemy.
The verdict in their minds was already sealed. What followed was not justice. It was humiliation. Blindfolded, struck, mocked.
Prophesy unto us, O Christ. Who is he that struck thee?
The gods laughed. But the one they mocked had already seen this night long before it came. As the first pale light of dawn approached, they led him to the Roman governor. For under Roman rule, the council could condemn, but only Rome could crucify. Pontius Pilate, the reluctant judge in the most consequential trial in history. Pilate studied the prisoner carefully. This was not the revolutionary he expected. No wild defiance, no desperate pleas, only a quiet, unshaken presence.
Art thou the King of the Jews?
You have said so.
Pilate tried another path. It was the custom at the feast to release one prisoner to the people, a gesture meant to maintain fragile peace. Before them now stood two men, Jesus of Nazareth and Barabbas, a known insurrectionist. Pilate presented the choice. Surely, he thought, they would choose the teacher. Surely the crowd would show reason. But the voices rose instead like a storm.
We want Barnabas.
We want Barnabas.
What then? Do you want me to do with the one you call the King of the Jews?
Crucify him!
Crucify him.
The governor hesitated. History seemed to pause on the edge of that moment. But the pressure of the crowd, the politics of Rome, and the fragile peace of Passover closed in around him. And with reluctant hands, Pilate washed his hands and gave the order that would change the world forever. The innocent had been condemned. The lamb was moving toward the altar. Meanwhile, while the trial unfolded inside the high priest's house, another test was taking place outside. Peter had followed at a distance, not with the boldness he once declared at the supper table, but cautiously, carefully. Fear had already begun its quiet work. In the courtyard below, servants and guards had kindled a small fire against the chill of the night. Peter drew near and sat among them. The flames flickered across his face. For a moment, he almost blended into the shadows. Almost. A servant girl looked closely at him, her eyes narrowed with recognition.
You also was with Jesus of Galilee.
I do not know him.
The words struck like sudden lightning, and Peter, the one who had sworn unwavering loyalty, felt the eyes of the courtyard turn toward him. Fear rose quickly. He moved away toward the gate, but the night was not finished with him. Another voice spoke, another accusation.
This man was also with him.
I have never seen him before.
The pressure mounted. The danger felt closer now, and again Peter denied it, this time with an oath. Then, after a little while, those standing nearby came forward. Their voices were more certain now, more insistent.
Surely you also are one of them, for your speech has betrayed you.
I swear to you I don't know him.
At that very moment, a rooster crowed. And somewhere within the high priest's house, Jesus turned. Across the courtyard, across the distance, his eyes met Peter's, not with anger, not with condemnation, but with a sorrowful knowing that pierced deeper than any rebuke. Peter froze. The words of the Master rushed back upon him.
Before the cock crow tomorrow, you shall deny me thrice.
The weight of it broke over him all at once, and Peter went out into the night and wept bitterly. Roman scourging was no ordinary punishment. It was designed to bring a man to the edge of death. The whip, weighted with bone and metal, tore into his back. Again, and again, and again. The soldiers, amused by the charge of kingship, staged their cruel parody. A crown of thorns, a purple robe, mocked homage.
Hail, King of the Jews! Hail, King of the Jews!
Hail, King of the Jews.
Yet every drop of blood fulfilled what the prophets had spoken centuries before. The sentence had been pronounced, the crowd had spoken, and the machinery of Roman execution now moved forward without mercy. According to the custom of crucifixion, the condemned man was required to carry the crossbeam of his own execution through the public streets, a slow procession of shame, a public warning from Rome written in wood and blood. The soldiers removed the scarlet cloak. They placed the heavy wooden beam upon his wounded shoulders, and under the growing light of morning, Jesus began the long walk to Golgotha. Jerusalem was fully awake now. Passover pilgrims filled the narrow streets. Word spread quickly through the city. The one called Jesus of Nazareth was being led to crucifixion. Step by step he walked, but the scourging had already taken its toll. Blood loss, exhaustion, shock. The human body, though divine purpose drove him forward, was grievously weakened, and beneath the crushing weight of the cross, Jesus fell for the first time. The beam struck the stone pavement. Dust rose into the morning air. The soldiers shouted sharply. The procession faltered, then forced forward again. Seeing that he could scarcely continue, the soldiers seized a man from the crowd. Simon of Cyrene, a pilgrim far from home, pressed suddenly into service by the authority of Rome. The cross was laid upon Simon's shoulders, and he was compelled to carry it behind Jesus. Among the crowd was a woman whose heart was moved with compassion. Tradition remembers her name as Veronica. While others watched in silence or turned away in discomfort, she stepped forward. Braving the soldiers' presence, she approached the suffering Christ. In her hands, a simple cloth. With trembling courage and tender mercy, she reached up and gently wiped his face. For a brief moment, time itself seemed to slow. Love had met suffering in the middle of the road, and according to the ancient devotion of the faithful, when she drew the cloth away, the image of his sacred face remained upon it. The soldiers quickly forced the procession onward, but the act of compassion would be remembered for generations. The procession moved forward again, slower, heavier, more sorrowful. The road climbed higher. The strain grew worse. Though Simon now bore the wood, the wounds of the scourging still cried out from every movement. The crowd pressed close. The air grew heavy, and once more, Jesus fell. The stumble was deeper this time, the body weaker, the journey harder, yet still he rose again. Among the onlookers were women of the city who wept openly at the sight before them. Their grief was real, their sorrow deeply human. But even now, even beneath the shadow of the cross, Jesus turned toward them, and with labored breath he spoke.
Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children.
The road climbed higher. The strain grew worse, even on the road to death. His concern remained for others, still warning, still calling hearts to awaken. The hill of execution now loomed ahead, Golgotha, the place of the skull. Every step had become agony, every breath, labor. And just before the summit, Jesus fell a third time, the body pushed to its limits, the weight of the mission fully upon him, the silence of heaven heavy above the road. But once more, he rose. At last, the barren hill came into full view. The long walk was over. The place of execution had been reached. Golgotha. There, the cross would be raised, and the final sacrifice would begin. The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. Crucifixion was not new to them. They had done this many times before, but this morning, history itself stood upon that hill. They stripped him of his garments, the crossbeam was laid upon the ground, and the condemned was stretched upon the wood. The hammer was raised, then the first blow fell. Iron met flesh. The sound echoed across the hill, once, twice. Again the hammer fell. Yet from the lips of the one being crucified came no cry for vengeance, no curse upon his executioners, only the terrible silence of sacrificial love. The cross was lifted, slowly, heavily. It rose against the morning sky, and the Son of God hung between heaven and earth. Above his head, the charge was written in 3 languages: Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The chief priests protested the wording, but Pilate's answer was final.
What I have written, I have written.
Below the cross, the soldiers carried on with ordinary cruelty. They divided his garments among themselves, casting lots for the seamless tunic, unaware that even this had been spoken of long before. The crowd watched, some in silence, some in sorrow, some in bitter mockery. With him were crucified two criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Thus was fulfilled what had long been spoken. He was numbered among the transgressors. At first, even the criminals joined the chorus of mockery. But as the hours stretched on, something changed in one of them. The other thief railed in bitterness.
If you are the Christ, save yourself and us.
But the second rebuked him sharply.
Do you not fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation, and we indeed justly, but this man has done no evil? Lord, remember me when you comest into thy kingdom.
Amen, I say to thee, this day you shall be with me in paradise.
They divided his garments among themselves, casting lots for the seamless tunic, unaware that ancient prophecy was quietly being fulfilled at their feet. Nearby stood those who loved him most, Mary, his mother, and the disciple whom he loved. Grief hung heavily in the air between them. Even in the extremity of crucifixion, his concern turned outward.
Woman, behold thy son. Son, behold thy mother.
And from that hour, the beloved disciple took her into his own home. The hours dragged on. Pain deepened into exhaustion. Breath came harder now. The sky above began to change. At about the 6th hour, darkness spread across the land. Not the gentle fading of evening, but a heavy, unnatural shadow that covered the hill of Golgotha. For 3 long hours, the light withdrew. Then, from the cross, came the cry that pierced the darkened sky.
My God, why have you forsaken me? I thirst.
A soldier lifted a sponge soaked in sour wine upon a branch of hyssop and raised it to his lips. The final moments were drawing near. Gathering what strength remained, Jesus spoke with solemn finality.
Father, into your hands I commend my spirit.
It is finished.
His head bowed, his body grew still. The Lamb of God gave up his life. At that very moment, the earth trembled, rocks split, and within the temple in Jerusalem, the great veil was torn in two from top to bottom. Beneath the cross, a Roman centurion stared upward in stunned silence. The hardened soldier, witness to many executions, saw something he could not explain, and in quiet awe he said,
Truly, this was the Son of God.
They laid him in a borrowed tomb, belonging to Joseph of Arimathea, a true follower. The stone was sealed. Hope seemed buried. But heaven was not finished, because the cross was never the end of the story. It was the doorway to redemption.
Dearest friends, if you like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, as it will go a long way to support us. Thank you.